receive their checklist? Yes, Nika says, okay. So this, what's it called, session will be recorded and you'll get the replay afterwards. Just. Okay, one more question. I know some of you are like newbies here, completely new. You're not rebels yet. And you might have discovered our tax session from somewhere, like in the online. Let us know if this is your very first time attending a Rebel session, a Rebel Plus session. So give me a first time, yeah, in the chat. Oh, wow, so many of you are completely new. Okay, so all of the rebels now in the Zoom, please, like, let's take some time to welcome all these amazing people to our session. Welcome, everyone. So we are the Rebel School. If you want to know more about us, go to our website, the Rebel School, therebelschool.com. You'll find out everything about what we do. Our main thing is to help small businesses get started for free, without any business plans and without any business loans. Okay, so that's the like the summary, a very small part of what Rebel does. We do everything for free, so don't feel like at the end of this session I'm going to sell you something. I will not. This is completely free, and we're not going to sell you anything from the very beginning till the end. We're not going to ask you for any information that, like, you might think, oh my God, this is like private information, or like everything that you submit or you share is completely within the private realms. Okay, so I saw lots of people asking questions and so on. I'm hoping that you helps me out with the questions, but I'm going to come back to you guys. But I want to get started for those of you that came here nice and early. Hi, Emma.
Hi.
Can everybody hear Emma and I well before we get started? Yes. Okay. Thank you for your response. What an active bunch of people. Okay, Emma, could you introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, a little bit of background, what's your favorite pizza topping kind of thing?
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma. I'm excited to be here, even though some of you said horrible subject. But it's actually, well, it's not my favorite subject, but I do like it. So yeah, I'm an accountant. I am a chartered accountant. I have my own business. I help the Rebel School with their accounts. So January is a crazy busy time for us, but I've taken some time out of my schedule to come here and answer some questions. We deal with small businesses, so sole trades, limited companies, partnerships, and some personal taxes as well. So hopefully I can answer most of your questions and provide some help for you guys, because I think a lot of people struggle with this area.
Yes, for sure. I saw someone write death to taxes, and I was like, okay, they end in the right place. Okay, let's get started with the questions, guys. Don't worry if you've written some stuff in the chat. We're going to take them and we're going to put them aside and trying to answer as many of those questions as possible. Kimberly has kindly put in the chat basically the outline of what you need to do in order to get your taxes done, with all the links in the checklist. Thank you, Kimberly. So let's get started. Question number 1 is from Julie Smith. She says, I need to file my first self-assessment tax return. I have registered, but still have not received my unique taxpayer reference, UTR. What should I do, and what is this likely to mean?
Okay, so in order to submit a tax return, as you've said, you need a UTR number, which is called a unique taxpayer reference number. It's a 10-digit number that HMRC send you in the post once you register for self-assessment. The deadline for registering for self-assessment for the tax year that's due in a few days was actually the 5th of October 2022. So if you registered before that and haven't received your UTR, then I would suggest calling up HMRC and asking where it is. Even if you registered after that, often they will send out your UTR within, normally it takes a few weeks, so it should be there, even if you did register after the deadline. However, I know they are very busy at the moment, and a lot of the codes are kind of either going lost in the post or not getting to people. Also, the Royal Mail strikes didn't help either. So a lot of people are receiving like their codes really late or not at all. So if you're still waiting for your code and you've got everything ready to go, then what I would do is I would just call their helpline and ask them about it. I know that that's annoying because you have to sit on hold for quite a long time. I've done it. I've sat on hold for like almost an hour before. But it's just, yeah, that's the only way. If you don't have a UTR number, it won't kind of let you submit it, which is annoying.
So my question, like to you, just as I'm listening, is, so she's in a situation which she doesn't have a UTR. What happens if January 31st comes and goes and she's not able to get her UTR? What would you advise her to do?
So I'd advise her to call up HMRC before then and explain the situation. If she has registered before the deadline, then she shouldn't have any penalties or anything like that. It's just their fault that they haven't kind of sent the UTR out. But again, they should be able to trace that on the system when you ring up and you give them your details, and they'll be able to see what the progress is. Sometimes the registration may have been lost, or sometimes if you register for a UTR, they'll send you an email to say there was an error in the registration. So if you haven't had one of those, it should have gone through. So what you do is you call up the helpline, which I can I'll write in the chat the number to call. And then
ask you that. That was the next question I had. If someone could put the number in, so it's great that you have that number ready to go.
If there's a valid reason, again, that she hasn't kind of got her UTR, but she's actually requested it before the deadline and she can prove that, then there shouldn't be any penalties.
Amazing. So like, please, like if that's your next action, you have to call HMRC, like do it on the call. Don't wait around. Don't be like, okay, I'm going to do it at the end of this session. Here at Rebel, we push you to take action right now. So as soon as you get the number, like stay on the call. You're going to probably wait an hour. So just leave it on the side and don't wait around. Thank you so much, Emma. Please save that number now, guys, before it goes all the way up.
I've put the number in the chat. That's the self-assessment number that you need to call.
I love that you have HMRC on speed dial, right? Are you friends with them?
I just know it in my head, so
shivering at the thought. Okay, awesome. Let's go to the next question from Paul Dehan. I hope I am not butchering your name, Paul. Do you have to pay do you have to pay class 2 national insurance if you earn under 6K in one sole trader business, and would earnings elsewhere from property affect this? Thank you.
So class 2 national insurances are the kind of insurances that you pay on being self-employed. So you pay class 2 and class 4. Class 2 you pay on the smaller earnings. So the threshold for that, for the tax year that we're currently doing for 21-22, the threshold for the paying class 2 was £6,515. So if you earn under that, you don't have to pay class 2 national insurances. Next year that's going up. So the tax year that we're currently in, but not due until next January, is 11,908. So that's gone up. So what that means is, you've got longer to kind of until you pay class 2. Class 2 is £3, currently about £3.05 a week. It's going up to £3.15 for the 2022-2023 tax year. So I would say in that situation it looks like you won't need to pay class 2. However, you may want to consider whether you voluntarily pay class 2. And that is an option. And also, so if this is your only work, then it might make sense to pay those class 2 national insurance. I think there's a box you can tick to say, I want to make voluntary contributions. The reason for that is then it becomes a qualifying year for your state pension. And obviously you need a certain number of qualifying years. And class 2 is a lot lower than paying class 3, which is a lot higher. It's about 3 times more. So if you want it to count as a year and you haven't got any other work elsewhere that's going to qualify you, then you might want to consider paying class 2 voluntarily.
Okay, for those of you that are listening, that you're like, oh my god, back just like a year ago, I was complete noob at this. So when I'm hearing the years, like for some of you, you might be thinking, oh my god, like what does that like even mean? The years can be a bit confusing when you're collecting your receipts, invoices, and so on. And Kimberly's kindly added into the chat the tax year and the deadline into the chat. Please copy that, put it aside, because when you are like collecting your receipt, invoices, and banks, you need to like look at like basically only get expenses, right? For those dates and not like after that, not even I think a day. Could you just like maybe simplify a little bit going back to when you're supposed to be reporting? Because I found this super confusing when I first started as to when the year ends, when I get started, when I'm supposed to pay for everything, just kind of like that bit, and then we can move on.
Cool. So
Helpful for anybody? Just want to know if there's any noobs in the house like me.
So the tax situation is quite confusing. Obviously we're doing this in January because the deadline's coming up.
Yeah.
This deadline is for the 2021-2022 tax year, and that tax year runs from the 6th of April 2021 to the 5th of April 2022. So you get 9 months or so to report that and pay your taxes. And that's why we've got this deadline of 31st of January 2023, which Halima's put in there in the chat. So that's that tax year that we're currently kind of trying to get done. And then obviously we're currently in the 2022-2023 tax year because we're in just January 23, which falls from the April 22 to April 23 effectively. So that's why it's quite confusing. Okay,
awesome. Thank you so much. I'm there to know, like, I know which questions, guys, because I've been there and I'm like, why is it so confusing? Just start January 1st. So yeah. And so Paul, I hope that answers your question. Okay, the next question is from Caramel Soldier. It says, hi there, I'm a sole trader, creative entrepreneur, mainly in the dance and entertainment. I've always had an accountant to do my tax returns, but this year can't afford to have them to do my taxes. Do I have to have a chartered accountant to do them, or can they be done by myself? As my housing benefit offer will be requiring the report and they request it from an accountant. Just wanting to know so I'm not wasting anyone's time and get my taxes to be done correctly. As I'm at a loss this year too and can't afford to be fined for late fees as well. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Caramel.
So what I'd say is normally you can do your own tax return, which is probably what most of you are doing here. If you're sole trade, you don't need an accountant, although an accountant can sometimes help you, especially if you've got a bigger business. But it sounds like she needs an accountant certificate for that housing benefit proof. So what I would say is I would check with the housing association and give them a call and see if they do require it to be signed off by an accountant, in which case she's probably best off sticking with the current accountant and doing it through them, because obviously then she's going to have to do it herself, and then she won't get the certificates. The housing association will want it, and then she'll have to get it all redone by an accountant anyway. So it's, yeah, in that situation, I'll probably check with them if they do require it, and just explain the situation that you're making a loss, and yeah, and see what they say and see if there's a way around it. But that's quite a, yeah, it's quite a unique situation. Normally you wouldn't need to have an accountant to do your tax return.
When I think there's like a, when do you have to have it by law? Like when do you have to have an accountant? Like if you do have a business, is it like as a sole trader you never need it, right?
Yeah, you don't actually need to have an accountant to do your tax return or to do your company accounts if you're competent to do it yourself. So it's actually not regulated.
Oh,
It's just often advised sometimes to do it if it's complicated, because often then, there's no risk of you making a mistake, or sometimes if you've got a bigger business, an accountant can save you money in the long run. So that's why, yeah, that's why I suggest that. But yeah, if it's simple and if you're making a loss or you're making very little, then I'd just do it yourself.
okay, awesome, thank you. I'm gonna stop the questions, just kind of come back to you guys. So there's a lot of anxiety around taxes, Emma, just from experience, right?
Yeah.
Quick story. I like when I first joined Rebel, I was like, I'm earning money with my business. And I said to Simon, the founder of the Rebel School, I think I'm going to get arrested because I'm not doing my taxes properly. Exactly what Kerry said. I had a lot of fear, and that's why I wanted to use an accountant to do everything, because then the responsibility is not on me, right? So there's a lot of anxiety around it. Could you give us like just a few tips, or like I guess like say something about that, because sometimes we do make mistakes, and like what's the likelihood of me ending up in prison? I'm joking. Like, I know that's extreme, but I did think that. So I would love to kind of just get like a few words of wisdom from you, so I can feel a little bit calmer, and everybody else as well. Okay. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, so I don't, if you make a mistake on your tax return, you're not going to end up in prison. That's not going to happen. Obviously, if you fraudulently do something, then potentially you could, but you're not, that's not going to happen for the majority. So I'd say, if you've made a kind of an educated stab at it, and you've read the guidance, and you can prove what you're putting on there, and the worst potentially that they could do is they could say, right, that expense, we're not allowing that, take that out, you've got to pay more tax, and potentially pay some interest on the unpaid tax that kind of you didn't pay. So there are fines and penalties for doing things kind of carelessly as well, and deliberately. So if it's not deliberate but it's careless, you can get a slight penalty. So it depends on their definition of careless, right? If you've kind of taken care and you can prove that, then I don't see how they can give you a penalty, but they could kind of get you to repay the tax that was due, and from the mistake, basically. So normally, if you kind of just put your hands up and be like, oh, I didn't realize, whatever, then normally they will kind of just make you repay the tax that was due with maybe a bit of interest. So yeah, you're not going to prison. So
okay, so I think someone asked the question that I wanted to ask earlier. What if you haven't kept every receipt or every invoice? You said you have to prove it. Does that mean I don't put the expenses on the list if I don't have a receipt, for example, but it's on my invoice in my bank statement, for example?
Yeah, I'd say like try and keep all your receipts. Obviously, if there's a few that you haven't got, but you can prove that you paid for it, then I would still put that through. It depends on the amount, right? If it's a few £1,000, then yeah, you need an invoice for that. But if it's 20 quid here and there, then you've got to be kind of sensible about it. And I think they would they'd be fine with that. Obviously, if you're VAT registered, that's completely different. You need VAT receipts for everything. I wouldn't claim anything if you didn't have a VAT receipt for it, because that's kind of a separate tax. But if you're just kind of a small sole trader and you just forgotten like 20-30 quid receipt here and there, then I would still kind of put that through if you can prove that you paid for it. And most receipts are online and electronic anyway. It's just the odd kind of coffee receipt, which you can probably prove from your bank statement anyway. So yeah, I would say, yeah,
Okay.
try and keep your receipts, but yeah.
Okay, awesome. I think that makes me feel a little bit better about the poor prison thing. So we'll move on to the next question, everyone. So Marcia says, I started working freelance in January of 2021. Does this mean that I can only I only submit my income and expenses from January 2021 to end of March 2021? And also, if I have earned less than 6K in the time frame, will I need to pay tax or national insurance on the money, please? Many thanks, Marcia.
Yes. So if so for that period of time, does she mean 21 or 22? Because that's a long time ago. So I'm assuming it's 22 potentially. But yeah, so she'll only need to pay tax on the income in that period for that tax return. So that's correct. What was the second question?
So she said, if I earned less than 6K in the time frame, will I need to pay taxes or national insurance?
Okay, so this depends on whether she has any other income or not. If she's got no other income, that £6,000 is lower than the tax-free personal allowance that we all get of £12,570. So, and it's also lower than the class 2 national insurance limit that we talked about earlier. So she wouldn't effectively pay any tax on that or national insurance. However, she would still need to put that on the tax return and declare it. However, if she's got another job, then she would potentially have to pay tax, because you look at your total earnings for that period of time. So if it's that so the other earnings in that tax year would need to be taken into account, and then she would potentially pay tax and national insurance on that money. Well, tax anyway on that money.
Thank you for adding that bit, because that's the bit that I was like, oh, I had to do that. So once you start earning, it means like you've had your £12,000, 12,000 something pounds allowance, which means anything you earn from your small business and like anything after the 12,000 gets taxed, and you get charged national insurance.
Yeah.
Right.
So her sole trade income, she would pay, if it's under £6,000, £6,000, she would pay some tax if she had another job potentially, but no national insurance on it, because each kind of, for national insurance, it's treated as separate employments.
Oh, I see.
But for tax, she might pay some tax on it, like 20% or 40%, depending on what her other earnings are. So if she had a job for like 20 grand, then she might pay 20% of £6,000 because it's in the kind of 20% rate. Okay,
amazing. Yeah. Thank you. You're so like, you make me feel calm about everything. It's good.
It's all right. That's what I'm here for.
So I don't know how to pronounce this name, but it says Waitu. I don't know if it's correct pronunciation. Please don't hate me. It says if he or she asked, if you loan your own personal money to yourself in self-employed business bank account during slow work periods in order to keep business costs covered over time, and then intending to withdraw it in a better time, where and how do you declare it in your tax returns? Is it considered a loan, even if it's your own money, or is it something else? Thanks.
Okay, so this person they're a sole trader and they're loaning their sole trade money. There is no implication, because in a sole trade, you are the business. So you're basically only paying tax on any income you earn. So there's no implication of that. You don't need to put it on the tax return. It's just what's called drawings, money taking in and out of your sole trade business. So all you need to declare on your sole trade tax return is your income and your expenses for your kind of business. Any money kind of between you and the business is just your own personal kind of drawings, so it doesn't really affect anything.
Awesome, thank you. Kelly Robinson's asked, I've had other income, universal credit, cares allowance, and substantial amount gifted from the sad death of my granddad. Do I need to declare any of this when inputting details. UC carers are aware of self-employment status and money from granddad. Just not sure if I need to declare any of this info on the tax return. Also, I'm sure there are a few of us lost receipts. I can't find a few receipts in my records. It's totally into around. I think we answered this question earlier. Is this an issue? Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah. So universal credits and carers allowance are taxable. So you have to put those on your tax return. There should be a place to put those kind of under the benefits section. So you do need to declare the amounts that you've received in that tax year, and they will kind of form part of your income for your tax return. The gifts, so she mentioned that she was gifted some money after her granddad passed away. That would have been dealt with under the rules of inheritance tax. So there should be no need to put that on the tax return. That will have been taxed separately. So yeah, that's the answer to that. And then the receipts thing, yeah, just make sure you keep receipts if you can, but the odd receipt here and there is probably fine.
Great. Now let's move on to Becky. Becky says, I'm a little bit unsure as to how you can claim some of your working from home costs. This was a big thing for me too. Cost of expenses, for example, self-employed and employed on a remote but permanent contract. So wondering how I could calculate, say, internet costs for my business proportion, if that makes sense. Is it just a case of working out how much time I spend on my own business versus how much I spent on my other job and personal use? I also claim £6 a week tax relief in my other job, so don't want to double up or do anything wrong.
Okay, so there's quite a lot going on here. This is a common question we get asked a lot, like what expenses you can claim as a sole trader. I'm going to send a link on Zoom, and this is kind of just a link to kind of the key expenses that you can claim as a sole trader. And then specifically, let me just do that. And then specifically, she asked about internet as a percentage. So you can basically, it has to be reasonable. So you basically can work it out in any way you want to, but it has to be sensible and reasonable. So if you work from home 3 out of 5 days or 3 out of 7 days a week, and you roughly work for, I don't know, 8 hours, then you can do like a proportion of the time overall for internet. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate. A lot of our clients say, oh, I estimate it to be 20% business, 80% personal. As long as there's kind of some reason behind it, HMRC won't challenge it unless it's like, oh, I'm claiming 100% of the cost and it's obvious you're still using internet for personal and not just business. So as long as you can kind of prove what you're claiming. So a lot of people do 50-50 if they're kind of working from home kind of most of the time and then claiming and then kind of using it the weekend and evenings, then that's kind of a sensible amount. But again, yeah, it's just kind of applying kind of a bit of sensible, being sensible about it. There's also flat rate expenses that you can claim. And I think that's it based on the number of hours you work from home as a sole trader. The details are on the government website. So again, I can try and find that link. But yeah, based on the number of hours, you can just claim a flat percentage instead of kind of worrying about kind of calculating all your working from home costs and then dividing it by the number of rooms that you have and then all of that. So yeah, there's various ways to work it out, but I'd say just kind of, yeah, be sensible. The main working from home costs are kind of, so we talked about internet, so that's one. Telephone, so like your mobile phone, you can do the same. You can calculate a percentage of that. A lot of people just do like 50-50 roughly. Also like your heating and everything else. So if you are working from home a lot, then you might want to calculate your total running costs of the home. So that includes your gas, your electric, your council tax, your mortgage interest only, but not the repayment side of it. So that's, be careful with that, or your rent. If you calculate the total running costs for the year, and then what you can do is calculate how many rooms of the house you use. So like if you use 1 room out of 7, that's 1 divided by 7, a seventh of that total cost. But then you're only using that room for like maybe 5 days out of 7. So you have to do times 5 over 7. So it sounds complicated, but you've just got to do it as a proportion of your total kind of time you spend in the home. Again, it's a grey, it's not going to be 100% accurate all the time, but it's just kind of an estimate, and it's got to be a reasonable estimate. HMRC will challenge something if it's massively, if you're claiming, you know, £10,000 use of home when your income's like £10,000, it just, that won't, they'll challenge that. But if you're claiming a reasonable, sensible amount, then they won't. So yeah, it is about applying kind of just a bit of like judgment behind it. But yeah. So those are the key costs, and then I've sent the link which shows basically we list kind of all the sole trade expenses that could be claimed by a sole trader, and it goes into a little bit of detail on like use of home and everything else on there. So this can just hopefully trigger some of the costs that you might think, oh, I do have that, I do have insurance, I do have, you know, IT costs and all of that. So it can just hopefully help trigger some things to put in your tax return. But yeah.
So I have a question around that I didn't know about before.
Yeah.
So when you said number of rooms, does that, I was going to make a joke and say, does that count the bathroom? But you mean like rooms that you can stay inside and work from, yes?
That's it, yeah. It wouldn't count like a bathroom or a kitchen, I don't think.
Okay.
It literally just counts rooms. Again, this is like this, that's one way of doing it. You could do it on a percentage of floor space, as long as you can document what you've done and prove it to HMRC. It's because if you think about it, you're using one space for a set period of time, but your house costs are for the whole house, right? For the whole time. So there's got to be a way of trying to break down what is the cost of me sitting here working from home. And that's why it's done. That's why it's easier just to do it on, oh, it's 1 room out of this. So yeah, that's the rationale behind it. But you could do it on floor space. You could do it on, if you use multiple rooms, which I think someone said on there, obviously you're not using all those rooms at the same time. So you're still going to have to time apportion it and space apportion it. So it's going to work out roughly the same, because you can't be in 3 places at once, can you?
Yeah, I mean, we try.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hayes asked this question. She says, I'm only here as I'm struggling to finish the form. Basically, I received an SEISS. I don't know how to pronounce that or say it. Is it SEIS? Is that how you say it? Grant, SEISS grant, and then was signed off work. So I have no earnings, yet the form won't let me move forward with the income at 0 amount. So I'm stuck in limbo and can't get through HMRC. What should she do?
Sorry, I missed the first part of that. Let me just...
Oh, sorry, it wasn't in the form, so it was in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. So she's got stuck on what part? Sorry,
got stuck on basically she can't move forward.
Yeah.
Because on HMRC she must have done something, I think, to click on the wrong button, or she has no earnings, so the form won't let her move forward with income at 0 amount. I think the very first question it asks you, hey, have you earned more than 1,000? I just remember that. And if you say yes to that, it asks you a million questions. That's
okay.
what
yeah, I wouldn't be able to comment on that. That sounds like quite a technical issue on the system. What I would say is to call up HMRC on that one if she can't progress the form further. As I said before, the problem is I don't actually log into the gateway and see the forms like they are. But it sounds like it's a technical glitch if it's not letting her move forward. If she's ticked, potentially she needs to go back, as you said, and tick that she hasn't received taxable income over £1,000. If she's putting in 0, then maybe she's ticked a button prior to that, so she'll need to go back and untick that, and potentially then that will let her go forward. So I'd try that first. If not, yeah, call up HMRC and ask them about that.
Awesome. And we all have the number now on speed dial, right, guys? So let's move on to the next question. AD says, wait 1 second. Yeah. Can I count property related training as an expense in my return if I own property in my own name and not through a limited company? If so, would travel to the training also count as an expense?
So it depends what this training is regarding. If it's to do with the property business itself, then yes, you could claim it. But yeah, the amount of tax returns that we've done in terms of including property income, we've never really seen any training costs on it. So I'm just a bit unsure as to what that course would be. But if it is purely for the property business, then yes, you could claim it. And the second part was about the inspection costs and the repairs. So yeah, normally the inspection costs I would put under maintenance on the tax return, and like repairs just go under repairs. It doesn't really matter if you get the wrong box on there because there's no impact. It all goes in the same place, but just, yeah, if you can split it out properly. Okay.
Just on top of that, I remember someone saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Emma, saying that if like you expense something if you're only like buying it because of your business. If your business didn't exist and you still paid for it, then that's how you know like you should expense it. Is that something that's like, I guess, useful to know? Like, let's say it's a uniform. I'm only buying the uniform for my business and it's for, I don't know, I'm in a hairdressing business. I would never buy that uniform otherwise. Yeah. I would expense that, yeah?
Yes, yeah, you would never buy it otherwise. So yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so I think there's one thing I also just wanted to clarify, I think on the universal credit thing. So I think for the carer's allowance, you definitely have to put that on the tax return. But the universal credit, I think I accidentally said it wasn't, it was taxable, but you don't need to put that on. So the carer's allowance, you definitely do because it's taxable.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate that. There's like a fountain of questions in the chat, guys. I hope we can get as many as possible through as many as possible. And we also have the next session. So we're going to basically get all of these, download them, and then just carry on with these questions in the next session. So if your question hasn't been answered, please feel free to come to the evening session as well and come hang out with us in the evening. Okay. The next question is by Chizin Sunni. I'm not really sure what the question is, but it just says capital gain return, which I have no idea what that is. So it maybe doesn't understand what that means. Like, what is the capital gain return?
I think we'll skip that question because there's no question there. Yeah.
Awesome. Michelle Fox says, hi, what sorts of things can we claim from on the tax return? Okay, so I work from home as a subcontractor working for a company too tight-fisted to act like real employers. Sorry, I shouldn't have read that bit. Okay, so don't have any purchases such as, sorry, the computer has changed some of the words from heating, laptop, electrical. Not sure what else I can add to the list. Thank you.
So in terms of expenses that you can claim.
Yeah,
so I would just refer back. Yeah, similar to last time, but yeah, we've talked about the use of home. We've talked about the internet costs. If you go and visit, you travel for business. So if you go and visit kind of clients, or you kind of travel to somewhere that's not kind of a normal place for work, you can claim the travel and the food costs for that, but it has to be a temporary workplace. It can't be like an office that you go to every day. So that's travel. They're the key ones. And then laptop, yes, you can put that through. IT costs, any subscriptions that you have for the business. Yeah, there's a whole long list, and if you look at that link I sent, it kind of triggers kind of the key ones. So it's basically the main rule is anything that's wholly for business you can put through, but it's got to be wholly for business, so it can't be personal as well. So yeah, you couldn't put through like healthcare or something like that where it's for you personally. It's not just for the business. You couldn't put through like your lunch, your packed lunch that you're taking out, because you'd have to do that anyway. So you can only put through like food where you're going somewhere that you wouldn't normally go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So any expense stuff, I think I'm going to skip if there's any other expense questions. Unless you guys you still don't understand, like, please let us know if there's anything that we need to clarify. Okay, so Abdullati El Hassan says, hi, started as self-employed this month for the first time, and I need to know what steps do I need to do my tax research. I have no experience about it. I received my UTR number last week and I created an account with HMRC. Thank you. So this is like,
that's great that they've got their UTR number. So yeah, what they need to do is log into their account, and there should be kind of an option to submit your tax return on there. So they need to click on that, and then they just need to follow the steps on there. There are actually some guidance papers to help fill in your tax return. So I'd say read those. I'll try and find a link for those as well. And yeah, if they can just read those papers, if they get, it's just basically ask you questions. It's like, have you got any taxable income over £1,000? And it just takes you through the steps of like, have you got any other income? So property income, you need to include interest, bank interest that you received in the year, any dividends that you received. You'll need to put in all of your employment income as well. So you'll need to get your P60 from your employer, or your P45 if you left in the year. And in there you'll have the taxable pay and the tax to put in. So yeah, it should tell you on there that you have to do that. And often it does have kind of guidance that pops up along the way. You'll obviously need to put in anything else, that any other income that you earn. So your sole trade income, you'll need to put that in. If you had dividends from a limited company or anything, you'd need to put that in. Obviously, if you received any other taxable allowances, then you need to put those in. And so it does ask you quite a lot of questions along the way. So I'd say go in, give it a go, and then if you get stuck, read the guidance notes. If you're still stuck and you're kind of completely, you've had a Google on the internet, because often I find a lot of the answers you can Google and find out. Have a Google. If not, then call up HMRC.
Awesome, thank you so much. Let's move on to the next one. Laurie says, I'm in the United States. Okay, as soon as she said that, I'm like, no. But she's moved there, so which means she's I just changed my business over to an S Corp from an LLC. I started it over 4 years ago with the help of the Rebel School, formerly the PopUp Business School. Would you be able to talk about the difference in filing taxes? We're not touching on
no, unfortunately not. Yeah, that's not kind of our area, unfortunately. We're just talking about UK taxes here. If you want to talk about US taxes, I think I'd advise getting a US accountant to help with that.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Ken, as soon as I saw the US, I was this is not going well. So Ken P says, will this tax return workshop be held? Oh, okay, another US. So in the US, or is this focus on UK taxes? We've answered that. Shanique Green, how is everything submitted? Do I need to send images of every receipt? Can I use QuickBooks app to submit?
Okay, no, you don't need to send any images of the receipts. You just need to keep them in your records, and what gets submitted is just the tax return figures that you upload to HMRC. So you can do everything through a software, like she mentioned, QuickBooks. So you can do it through QuickBooks. And I think they might have done the link between the gateway as well. So I think now you can submit through the software, but I would advise probably just submitting through the government gateway if you're not sure.
And we actually have like a what's it called, an Excel sheet that we already created and put the codes in to give you guys all of the different numbers that you need. I don't know if that was sent out to you guys. I'm not 100% sure. So let me know if you received that in the email yesterday. Just give me a yes if you have. If you haven't, then I'll get one of the team members to send it into the chat. Okay, awesome. So the way our Excel sheet works is that we automatically take out 20% of your income. So not income, sorry, your profit. And the reason for that is we get you into the habit of putting aside 20% from the very beginning, so that you're not kind of like, starting only when you start making money, and you get into the habit of, getting that 20% set aside for when you need to pay back your taxes. So I will get Ewan, if Ewan's here, to put in the what's it called, the Excel sheet into the chat in a bit. Right, let's move on to the next bit. No question there. But do pension contributions, do you need to add that into your taxes? They don't get taxed, right?
So pension contributions probably don't get taxed. It's a tricky area. I would say you need to check if you're, it depends. And that, I would say, if you're a sole trader earning under £30,000 or under £50,000, you don't need to worry about it because there's no tax implications. So when you start to earn above that, then you may be able to get extra tax relief, but it depends on the type of pension contribution that you've made. And I don't really want to go into the detail on this because it's quite complicated. So I'd say if you are earning over that, maybe consult with your IFA or your accountant and speak to them about it. But I'd say generally, pension contributions are not taxed. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Let's go to, we've got a few more questions, then we're going to go straight into the chat and look at some of your questions as well. Let's see. I'm going to skip that one. Sarah Anderson, I have a wedding photography business and I take deposits now for bookings that are not in the same financial year. I am unsure as how to submit that or which tax year it would fall under, which not taking fall under the with not taking the full payment. The reminder of the payment is normally due 1 month before the actual wedding.
Okay, so this will depend on whether you're preparing your sole trade accounts on a cash basis or on an accruals basis. So there are two options now. You can either do it on a cash basis, which is simpler, or on an accruals basis. So if I explain what the cash basis is first, the cash basis is where you record the income and the expenditure when you pay the money or receive the money. So it's based on the cash basis. So if you receive the money before the end of the tax year, then you would add that to your income in that tax year, right? It doesn't matter when the work's happening, it's just when you receive the cash or pay the cash. If you do it on an accruals basis, it's based on when you do the work. So in her case, she would basically, that those deposits would not count as income if they were on the accruals basis because they relate to next tax year. So for her, it's probably more beneficial maybe to do it on accruals basis because then she can move some of that income to a later date and then she pays tax at a later date. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes. How about like just people that are collecting cash? Like, how does that work? Like, so if I'm in a restaurant and I'm saying to people, there's only cash and people are paying by cash, how do you prove that? Like, how do you prove that you've been taking cash?
So if you work in a restaurant, then they should have a till register. So you should still be able to mark it as cash, I would have thought. If you're just receiving cash for jobs, then I would say have like a spreadsheet where you can document the amount you've received as cash. and put that in there. So
Okay.
yeah, those are the ways I would say.
Olga's asked a really good question, and someone else, Andrea, also wants to know the same thing. Guys, if there's a specific question that you like, and you've asked it already, please ask it again, because we've had so many messages come through. And if you also like the question, please like it. Like, I think there's a way to like the question or say, I want that one as well. And that way we can focus on the ones that lots of people want the answer to. So Olga says, could you please clarify if I registered as self-employed in summer 2022, do I need to pay taxes before 31st of January? Sorry if it's confusing. So yeah, that year thing is really confusing, Olga, but I think Emma will be able to answer that.
Okay, so she's registered in the summer of 22, and that's in the 22-23 tax year, which runs from April 22 to April 23. So she won't need to pay taxes until the 31st of January 2024. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay, great. So we've got a last question on the submitted questions, then we can start asking there. So Aisha says, I have multiple businesses. Do I need a separate UTR for each business, or can I consolidate all in one? And number two, I started both of my businesses in September 2022. Do I need to file my tax returns?
So yes, you only have one UTR number as a person, as an individual. You won't receive a separate one for each sole trade business that you have. So you put them all under that one UTR number, but there should be an option to segregate them out as different businesses on the tax return, but you don't have to. You could just put them all as one. So yeah, that's that question. And then the second part of that, sorry, Halima, what was that?
So she says, I started both of, so it's basically the question you answered before. So I started both of my businesses in September 2022. Do I need to do a tax return this year? So no.
Yeah, so that would be for next year, Jan 24. Nice one.
Awesome. Okay, so just to clarify, I think a lot of people heard that you said something about the universal credit, because someone else just sent me another question.
Yeah.
You mentioned putting universal credit on the tax return. Could you guide me to where this is, please?
Yeah, no, sorry. I meant when I corrected myself, I meant carer's allowance when I said that. So the universal credit doesn't need to go, is non-taxable.
Awesome. Right, let's take a look at all the questions with the smiley faces. Oh, so many questions. I'm going to look at the questions. The ones we have already answered, I'm not going to answer, okay? Okay, so Amanda's asked, is NI included in the tax bill, or is that paid and registered separately? I think that's a good question to answer.
Sorry, what was that? I've just got another link for the carers allowance thing, which is I've just sent a link showing these are the different ones that are tax-free and taxable, which is a very helpful link. So it lists all of the different benefits and which ones are taxable. So like bereavement allowance, carers allowance, job seekers allowance are all taxable, and then the tax-free ones are listed below as well. So that hopefully is really helpful for people.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Emma. These links are super helpful as reference as well for later. So Amanda's asked, is NI included in the tax bill, or is it that it's paid and registered separately?
So it should be included in the tax return. When you submit your tax return, it should all be included in there. And that should be split out at the end. So you should be able to see how much tax you're paying and how much national insurance you're paying.
So I don't need to do anything. I submitted my tax returns, and then it will automatically say, this is how much tax you need to pay, and this is how much national insurance you need to pay.
You pay it all as one lump sum. So you just pay it all, and then it gets divvied up by the government.
I know that. So thank you for that question, Amanda, and thanks for the answer, Emma.
There's a few.
Okay, so Jules says the HMRC says that there's a 12,570 personal allowance. Do I need to pay tax if my total income is less than 12,000?
Okay. You probably don't need to pay tax because you've got your £12,570 tax free. However, you might need to pay national insurance because it might be over the threshold. So you would still need to do a tax return, and you might need to pay some class 2 or class 4 national insurance. It'll be small, but you might need to pay a little bit.
Do you have any information regarding class 1 and class 2 NI, and what that means and what the numbers and figures are?
I do. There are
Okay.
lots of different figures, so I don't want to confuse everyone, but I can send a link for all the different rates.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
And we just as a side note, for those of you that don't know the Rebel School, we do have a online course that is for 2 weeks. And one of the days, usually on a Friday, we cover taxes and we cover accounts and taxes, bookkeeping on that day. And basically, we cover all of the basics, everything that you need to know, and it's completely free. So if you're here and you're like, oh my God, like I just want to know all of the basics first, try and get as many questions answered, but I do highly recommend that you sign up to one of our courses so that all your bases are covered, and you understand taxes very well. I think I had to do tax day 3 times for me to say, okay, I understand taxes now. My brain just hates it so much. But it gets easier, guys. I'm talking from the future you. Okay, did we get the link?
Yep, got the link. Yep.
Quick question. Ben says, if I started my business in the tax year but had one single expense in February 2022, then can I include that expense in this tax year?
Yes, normally it depends on the expense. If it's something you're still using in the business in that tax year, like a laptop, then yes, you can put it in. If it's something that maybe you've kind of had a drink, like you had some food or something, and then you started the business, but you were discussing the business then you probably couldn't claim that. So it depends on what it is. If it's a training course, potentially, but the big thing on sole trades is training courses are a tricky area. Basically, you can't claim for acquiring a new skill. So if you're basically learning to do something, you can't claim the cost of that, unfortunately. You can only claim the costs of like refreshing your skill set. So it depends what the expense is, but if you're kind of still using that expense in the business, then yes, you can claim it.
Awesome. Shervon Nichols has asked, when is payment due? So guys, just as a thing, like I'm going only for questions that have like smiley faces underneath. So 2 people or more have liked the question. So when is payment due? Can you spread the cost across the year if like the payment's a lot?
So payment would be due at the end of January. If you cannot pay the full amount, then I would advise speaking to HMRC and setting up a payment plan. There's a line that you can call, if I get the number, and basically you can arrange for a payment plan to be set up, and that's better than kind of incurring penalties on non-payment. You might have to pay some interest on it, but it's a better option than just not paying it and then getting like fines and penalties for not paying it. So yeah, I will try and find that number and drop it in the chat.
Thank you, Emma. Next questions from James. I bought a new van. I'm not VAT registered. Can I still claim for it?
This is quite a tricky one to answer. You're not VAT registered, so you could claim the van. You can claim a portion of the running costs. It depends. If you use it 100% for the business, then you can claim 100% running costs. But if you use it for personal as well, you'll need to kind of work out the percentage of personal versus business. And the actual cost of the van, it is like an asset. So you could potentially claim what's called capital allowances on it, which is like a tax relief you get for buying assets, like buying equipment like laptops, fans, cars, etc. But yeah, so that would be kind of something you could claim against your tax return potentially. If it's 100% business, you could claim the cost of it. If it's not 100%, you can only claim a percentage of what the business element is.
Okay. I like how everybody's liking their own question, guys. I see what you're doing. So Amanda says, I don't really understand this question. So do we have to pay tax on account, i.e. in advance of earning the money, or is there a possibility of opting out?
Yes, that's a good question. So we talked about the tax being due at the end of January. So if you've got tax to pay at the end of January and that tax bill is over £1,000, then what HMRC say is that you have to make what's called payments on account for the next tax year. And you have to make those payments in January and also July. And the reason for that is because you've already earned that money. Essentially, they're expecting you to earn the same amount as you did last year. And they're saying, well, we're already almost at the end of 2023 tax year. You need to make payments on account to cover those. So the way they work it out is, let's say your tax bill was £2,000 in January. You'll pay that £2,000 in January, but you'll also pay £1,000 in January towards your next year's tax bill and £1,000 in July for the next year's tax bill. So that £2,000, they're expecting you to have already earned the income on it. So you should be able to pay the taxes essentially, because everybody's good and saves money for their taxes. So that's why they do it. There's not really a way of opting out on that. The only way is if you can prove that your income has dropped below that, so that you don't need to make those payments on account. If you decide not to pay those payments on account, then they will charge interest and potentially penalties on those. So I'd say if you can't pay those payments on account, I would again ring up the HMRC payments line and try and set up a different type of payment plan, to kind of, basically in any case, don't just kind of not pay your taxes. Speak to HMRC before, because then they'll like minimize the penalties and the interest and stuff.
Awesome. I love that. That's a really, really good advice. Terry D asked, I had a lot of expenses research equipment before I became self-employed. How do I claim for this, as I did try once and it would not allow me to do this? How do I go about this?
Okay, so as we discussed, if he's got lots of equipment that he's claimed before he was self-employed, then he can, he's still using it now, he could claim the cost of that equipment. Obviously it depends when you bought them. So if he bought it like years and years ago, then it would be worth a different value when he kind of brings it into the business. So you'll need to just basically make sure the value that you're putting in is the accurate value at which kind of you brought it into the business. So it might have it might have lost some of its value. So he'll need to put that amount on the tax return, and there should be a box to put kind of equipment and assets on the tax return in the sole trade element. I would just put it in the current year. You don't need to worry about putting in a previous year and bring it forward. Just put it in the current year assets box.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Jess asked guys, just before I ask the next question, if I have missed your question, apologies, please write them again. If they are super important and you want to get them answered. There's so many things happening at the same time. My brain hurts. So please help me out, ask the question again. Don't feel sad. Okay, the next question is from Jess. What's the difference between tax and VAT?
So this whole session we've been talking about income tax and national insurance, and that's tax payable on your earnings, your personal earnings. VAT is a whole different other tax, and it's kind of like, it's an end person tax. So when you go to the shop and you buy something, you're paying VAT as a consumer. So it's a tax on the end user. So you buy a laptop, that's got VAT on if you look at the receipt, and you're being taxed on that for buying it. So VAT, you don't need to worry about unless you've got a business where your turnover, so your sales, are over £85,000 a year. That's when you need to register for VAT. So if you don't need to do that and you're a small business like a sole trader, then you don't need to worry about VAT. But just be aware that, yeah, your expenses have VAT on. You can't reclaim VAT. You don't charge VAT. It doesn't matter to you, other than the fact that, yeah, you're paying VAT on some things that you're buying, and you just can't, yeah, claim it back. If you're a business, you could claim that VAT back potentially.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emma. Next question comes from A. Bashiri. We set up a limited company on October 2021 and closed it on July 2022. Are we late for declaring our loss and profit?
So October, so this is a company specific, so I don't know whether you want to cover this, but I'll briefly cover it. But it's related to companies. So companies, like, your year end is different to the tax year. If you've got a limited company, October 2021, your first year end will be October 22, and you get 9 months to file your accounts, so you've still got time to do that. Obviously, if you took money out of the business, that would count as personal income that you would have to put on your personal tax return. So if you took out like a salary or dividends, that would need to go on your personal tax return that we're talking about here.
Amazing. Taskan asks, I think this is something you sent a link to. Are grants like from Arts Council of England taxable or tax-free? And Kerry underneath it said, I had a grant from council due to COVID.
Yeah.
Universal, you saw that?
So the universal credit is different to grants. Grants, like the sole trader grants that you received, those are taxable, and you need to put those on your tax return. So, you know, some of you might have received SEISS grants. Whilst you were, yeah, you do need to put those on your tax return. That's different to universal credit.
Awesome. Rabina says, I have to make a UK submission in 12 months' time, but I moved abroad for a couple of years with my partner. Do I have to do a different type of submission?
She would still potentially, if she's got any UK income, she would need to do a submission through the UK government still. But I'd call up HMRC and see if she needs to do that or not. She might not need to do a tax return anymore if she has no UK income and she's moved abroad. Then she's kind of resident abroad, so she doesn't then need to do any, unless she's got any earnings in the UK still, like a property or something like that.
Awesome beans. I hope that answers the questions, Robina. Evelyn says, I work, this is a funny, I like how you laugh at yourself, Evelyn. I work as an agency nurse working under the healthcare of IR 35. What expenses do I need to put down as I don't have many receipts?
So IR 35 is a very complex area, and generally you can't really claim anything against that. I would say speak to whoever does the payroll for that. So I think normally you get like an umbrella company through IR 35 to do your taxes and your payroll. And they're quite strict because IR 35 is basically you being an employee. You can only claim a certain number of expenses. So there's not many expenses you can claim. Again, it's quite a complex area. I would say speak to whoever does your kind of administers your kind of payroll on that.
Great. Salahuddin, it says during the April 2021 to April 2022, I was in full-time employment. Does the 1st of January 2023 deadline applicable to me as my former employer did the tax and my business is registered after this period?
It shouldn't be, because so it says April 22, so full-time employment. So they should have been taxed under the PAYE system by their former employer. And then if they've only been self-employed since then, that should fall into the next tax year, which is 2020, like the deadline is 2024.
Brilliant. Anna says, I have some rental income from my house outside the UK and some interest income outside the UK. Unfortunately, the renters damaged the property and we had to pay a significant amount on repairs. Can I offset the entire repair costs on the rental property with the interest income, or would I only pay a percent, or would only a percent be allowed?
So the rental income is separate to the interest income. You can only offset the repairs against the rental income, not the interest income. They're dealt with separately. So you pay tax on the interest income and tax on the rental income separately. So yeah, no, you can't offset it against the interest.
Brilliant. So we're just doing speed rounds, guys. Now we've got about 15 minutes left. What we're going to do after this session is we're going to go into a breakout room, and you're going to start your tax return, and you're just going to start going through your receipts, and we're going to do it right here until around 1 o'clock. So I'm going to start. I'm going to carry on now. Okay. So, all right. So Fabi has just answered Leodemaila's question. So that's really good. Thank you, Fabi, because it's really specific and it's a little bit kind of very detailed. So thank you for that. Ava, I have an investment ISA account. Do I need to declare the dividend and receive dividend I receive? Is it sorry, my brain's gone on shutdown.
ISAs, yeah.
Is it? It is fairly small, 10 to 30 a month.
Yeah. So if you got ISAs that are tax free, interest and dividends, then you don't need to declare them on your tax return because they're not taxable. So that's fine.
Awesome. Sam says, what is the percentage of mortgage interest we can claim?
Is this in relation to working from home, I presume, or rental property? So I guess it depends on, if you're working from home, then you do that percentage calculation, as I said, the number of rooms and the time spent working in those rooms, and it's a percentage of the total mortgage interest for the year. If it relates to property, then that's a different subject. So yeah, just let us know.
Okay, another, when do I submit my tax returns? I was in employment until December 2021. I set up as a freelance designer on the 8th of March 2022, but didn't earn anything until April 2022. Do I need to complete a tax return for 21-22 for expenses?
So she didn't earn anything from. So if you register, you might still need to do a tax return. What I would do is I'd log on to your government gateway, and if HMRC has requested you do a tax return, it will say on there, you should send in a tax return. And if you do need to do that, you can either send the return in with no income earnings, but your other income, or you can call them up and say, I don't need to do one. But sometimes they won't remove that, even if you've got no income. So it's probably easier just to submit it with no income, and then but if you log in and it says you don't need to do one, then you don't need to do one.
Okay. Catherine says, I'm asking this again. I hope it's relevant to others too. On the tax return, it asks about how many self-employed businesses you have. I did loads of dribs and drabs. Excuse me, bro. Just give me a second. I love that I can mute when I cough on Zoom. I can't do that in real life. Okay. I did loads of dribs and drabs in 2021 and 2022, e.g. freelance climbing, instructing, life coaching, freelance events work, and I started membership business, which we haven't registered yet and have been paid from the business partner up until now. Which we haven't registered yet, but have been paid for. For ease, can I just put it all down as one self-employed business, e.g. Catherine Gallagher?
Yes, you could do that. Yes, as long as the business. I'd just put them all down as one, to be honest. Yeah,
great. Simplifying things. I love it. Okay, so Callan, okay, 1 second. Are there any questions you like, Emma?
So I'm just reading through. I think on the rental property one, someone said, could they offset if the repair costs exceed the rental income? Can I claim that as a loss? What you can do is, if the costs are higher than your income, it will be a loss, but you won't get any tax relief in that year. You can carry that loss forward to future years and offset against future rental income. Because it's a separate stream of income, you can't get tax relief on the other streams. Just reading down. Percentage of mortgage interest we can claim on a rental property. That's just you put the whole interest figure on there, but HMRC then work out what your tax benefit on that is. Mortgage interest, you only get 20% tax relief on it. They've changed the rules. So if you're a 20% taxpayer, that's fine, you get the whole relief.
Yeah, there's a question here from Dee Thompson. She asks, even if your income is below 1K, is it worth completing the full tax return for all the expenses?
Yeah, that's a good question. If your income is below £1,000 as a sole trader, you don't actually need to declare that. However, if you've obviously already registered, then I would still do the tax return, as I said, because if you don't do it, you might get a fine if they've already kind of got that notice in the gateway to do it. The £1,000, there's this what's called £1,000 allowance, where if you've got earnings of up to £1,000, you don't pay any tax on it. So yeah, that's the same. That's £1,000 of sole trade income, or if you've got property income up to £1,000 as well, then you don't pay tax on that. So that's a little kind of rule that's yeah, they've got.
That's important as well to know that it doesn't include after expenses. It's just pure what you receive is 1,000, below 1,000, isn't it? Just to clarify what that 1,000 actually means.
Yeah, so it's your actual income is below £1,000. If you had income of £2,000, if you had income of £5,000 and expenses of £4,000, and you got a profit of £1,000, you still pay tax on that, because it's not the £5,000 is not below £1,000. Because it's the income, not the profit, basically, the £1,000.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the next question is compensation via the court taxable? This is from Jen.
I don't think so. I'm not sure on that one. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, thank
But
you.
I think yeah, basically any winnings like competitions and things are not taxable, so I'd assume it would be the same, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that.
So let me see.
Want to double check some rules. Let me just see.
So Lidma says,
yeah.
I thought your answer your question was answered, Maila, by Fabi. So we'll ask again. I'm not sure if you can answer this question. So it says, are you working with Ukrainian refugees? Could you explain to me, please, about all the taxes and other payments in the UK? I want to be absolutely legal, but it's not easy because I can't find any information as a checklist about my steps in the UK. Let me go back to the full question. I think she had like a longer one.
Yeah.
1 second. So she says, could you explain, please, how I've sent the declaration. If I earn less than 12,500, I'm a Ukrainian refugee and I have some money from Ukraine every month as a freelancer. So that was the first part.
Okay, yeah, so she would have to pay UK tax on that because she's now resident in the UK. So she would need to kind of, declare that income through HMRC. So I'd say register as a taxpayer. So register with HMRC and then start doing a tax return for that sole trade income. But yeah, okay. if she's unsure about her tax position or anything, I'd say give HMRC a call, because in that situation, it's a bit like, she might not be sure kind of. And I think there's places like the Citizens Advice Bureau and places like that can help people that are kind of from a different country to come in and understand kind of what the rules are. So I'd say maybe make use of those free services And went, so I've got a question here. If you're in full-time self-employment for half of the year and went self-employed, do you have to add that into your tax return, or is it only from when you started? So yeah, you basically do need to add in the tax, everything in that year. So if you were employed for half of the year, you would have had a P45 from your employer when you left. So you need to add those figures on there. And then you also need to add your self-employment figures on there too.
A is asking something. Oh, sorry. Are you done with answering that?
Yeah.
So A says, please let me know if grant given by private company is profit as it was given to help me. Where does it go in the return as I do not earn it as profit? Where do I add this?
A grant given by a private company is profit. I don't really understand that question. As it was given to me, where does it go in the return? Not earn its profit. Depends, I guess, what the grant was for. Yeah, again, that's quite a niche area. I wouldn't be able to advise on that, depending on, like, yeah, it depends on what the grant was for and whether it's taxable or not. There's no kind of one-off answer for that, because obviously the SEIS grants are taxable, but some other grants might not be. But
so the next question is, Kerry says, please answer. I'm so confused. I started my business in April 2022 and registered for self-assessment immediately. When do I do my tax return? I'm panicking.
Yeah, so if as we said before, if you started in April 22, then you need to do your tax return by the end of January, unfortunately, because you've been running your business. End of January 24. Because obviously April 22 is after the tax year, so we don't need to do that. I thought it said April 21 then.
Yeah,
you got time, January 24. Yeah.
So Kerry hack, you don't need to worry yet, but I would still start. I would get in the habit of doing my tax returns really early and getting all of the expenses and everything written down. I think it's super important for us to learn to kind of make it into a bite-sized routine thing where inside your calendar you do expenses and just understanding money on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah. Haley said, do you put the full income down or just the profit? If the business makes a loss, is it a minus figure you enter? So on the gateway, when you enter the figures in, it should ask you for your income figures and your expenses figures. So you put both figures in, it will calculate whether you've made a loss or a profit for you.
Anthony says, I'm a single dad of 2. I was a self-employed private hire driver from September 2021 to November 2022. I have done a self-assessment each and every month for my universal credit. How and what do I need to do? Please help.
Okay, so he's self-employed for that period. So September 2021, he'll need to do a tax return before the end of January. So he says he's done a self-assessment each and every month for universal credit. However, has he registered for self-assessment? He'll need to do the tax return before the 31st of January. He'll need to put in his earnings from the self-employed private hire driver from September 21 to the 5th of April 2022. So that those figures go on that tax return and pay tax on that. And then his universal credit figures. Yeah, I think Kerry's answered that on his chat.
And also a good question is, do you have, that's the first step would be to get the UTR, isn't it?
Register, yeah.
And like you said at the very beginning of this call, if they don't have a UTR number and they haven't registered, it's good to talk to HMRC just to kind of have that on the record that you have tried to contact them and try to register for the UTR as soon as possible. Yeah.
Yes.
Is there a special link that we need to have to I guess to register for the UTR? Because one of the things that I used to find really annoying is finding links on the .gov website. Like, it's just so hard. Is there a link to specifically register for the UTR so that Anthony can, register for the UTR today and get started? With getting confused about the links.
Yep, register for self-assessment. I can send that link. Register. Yeah, there's obviously different options if you're self-employed or if you're not self-employed. So if you're a sole trader, you need to click on this link. You need to click on the self-employed bit and then click through, and it will ask you to set up a gateway and register there.
Thank you so much. That's super useful. Sandra's asked, oh, sorry, my cat is just going crazy. Just 1 second. He's just kind of.
Okay, so I'm just reading this question. I got a red sign saying profits are the same or above profit threshold. Select no to do you want to pay class 2. So how do I pay it class 2? So yeah, if you want to pay class 2, then don't select. Select if you want to select the box to say, do you want to pay class 2? Select yes. If you don't want to pay it, then just select no.
So Sandra is asking in all caps, cannot access my online tax assessment as Gov ID has not been confirmed. Called HMRC and they have suggested I send in a paper copy? ? So
if that's what they've suggested, then I would suggest doing that. You can print off a paper return online, and I'd suggest filling it in there. They're obviously under a lot of stress at the moment at this time of the year, so I'd suggest filling it in as soon as possible, and maybe sending it like recorded delivery so that you can prove that you sent it in before the end of January.
Nice. Oh, thanks for putting the link. Let's see. Austin's asked, can you explain how NICs are calculated if you have self-employed income, sole trader, as well as PAYE income? Thank you.
So I think we touched on this earlier, the sole trades calculation. So it depends if you're under the threshold for class 2 national insurance, then you don't pay class 2. But if you're which was roughly £6,000 this year, goes up next year, and then class 4, I think I've sent a link with the different rates for self-employed. So you pay class 4 when you hit a certain level. I think it's around £9,000 or £10,000 you start to pay class 4. So yeah, that's all. It's all calculated in the system. All you need to do is enter the figures onto the gateway of like what income or what expenses you've had, and then HMRC will calculate it for you.
Emma, just conscious of the time. Oh my God, you've just been such a incredible help today.
See so many other questions here.
So what I'm gonna do is basically just download these and just kind of take them over to the next side. But there are gonna be people that are basically gonna need some of the questions asked again. So if you haven't had your questions answered, we're going to download this and Emma will answer them tonight at 7:30, as much as we can. There's going to be a replay to this session. So if you didn't come at the very beginning of this session, you're going to be getting a replay of this, and your question is probably answered at the very beginning. So right now, we're going to be stopping the session. What we're going to do is basically go into breakout rooms with fellow business owners and get started with eating the frog, doing the thing that you guys have been putting off for such a long time. Before you go, Jean, if you guys have like a question that has not been answered, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe just send me an email. We'll send you guys my email in the chat. Send me the questions so I can put them into the evening session. Just on another note, just before I forget and put you guys into the breakout room, we actually have a course on financial literacy, like basically how to get really good at money and understanding money and so on. We have a finance course that's coming up. So Ewan will put the link in the bio if you're interested in, getting on top of money and so on. You'll be able to register. It's completely free. Please save the link so that you can join that course. Otherwise, thank you all for coming today. I hope you enjoyed the session. We would love to get your feedback Ewan has sent in like a little link to just get give us your feedback. What did you think of Emma? She was terrible, right? I'm kidding. I like how you agreed, Emma. That was good. But yeah, let us know what you thought. And we'll see you in the evening for those of you that are coming back for more questions. Otherwise, we're going to put you guys in the breakout room in like 2 minutes. Emma, before we go, do you have any last tips, feel good sentences to help us with our tax return?
No, I just think, yeah, it sounds really daunting, but I think, yeah, it's not as bad as it seems. The hardest part I find is starting it. And then once you get going, it's okay. I'd say, yeah, it's better to like have a go at it and do it before the deadline rather than leave it and get a fine, because you don't want to get the £100 fine and then it builds up as well. So yeah, give it a go. And then anything you're not sure about, then maybe just check with each other in the breakout room. So hopefully you can kind of, yeah, bounce the ideas off each other. So, but yeah, I'll be back and I'll read through any other questions that weren't answered and hopefully answer them later on.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Emma. Okay, I'm going to put everyone in the breakout room now. Thank you, everyone.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay. No. No. Sorry, guys. I put you guys in there for 5 minutes, which is too low of time. So let me put, I'm going to do the rooms again, just because the time was not correct.